Rain fell in slow, cold sheets over the cemetery, turning the ground to mud and blurring the edges of the gravestones. Ilara pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders, the bitter wind cutting through her like a knife. Around her, mourners whispered condolences, their voices muffled beneath the steady patter of rain. But all she could feel was emptiness, an ache in her chest that no one's words could fill. Her grandmother, her only true family, was gone. She watched the casket being lowered, her hands trembling, her eyes stinging. Memories of warm hands, gentle smiles, and secret stories whispered on stormy nights flickered in her mind. A sob caught in her throat, but she swallowed it, refusing to let anyone see her break. That's when she felt it, Valeria, her stepmother, standing a few steps away, her posture unnaturally rigid. Ilara had always sensed a coldness behind Valeria's polite smiles, but now it was sharper, almost predatory. Valeria's lips moved as if speaking to someone, though no one else was near. Then she looked directly at Ilara, and her voice, low and venomous, cut through the quiet. "You shouldn't be here," Valeria said, her eyes narrowing. "Leave now before it's too late." Ilara froze, staring. The words didn't make sense. At her grandmother's funeral of all places, why would Valeria warn her? Fear and confusion twisted in her chest, a bitter mix that made her stomach turn. What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Valeria smirked, stepping closer. "You're meddling in things you don't understand. This family, it isn't yours to claim. Leave or you'll regret it." Her warning was more than a threat. It was a promise, sharp and unmistakable, like a shadow crawling across her heart. Ilara wanted to run, to escape the cold and the dread curling around her, but something inside her froze her in place. A small, stubborn voice reminded her that she had nowhere else to go. Her grandmother had always told her to face fear, not flee from it. As the casket disappeared into the earth, Ilara noticed movement at the edge of the cemetery, a shadow slipping between the gravestones. She blinked and it was gone. Her chest tightened. Someone, or something, was watching her. The air seemed to thrum with a quiet, unspoken warning, as though the darkness itself had secrets it was ready to reveal. She clenched her fists, feeling both anger and a strange thrill. Valeria thought she could scare her away. She thought Ilara was weak, but standing there in the rain, surrounded by grief, something deep inside her shifted. "I'm not leaving," she whispered to herself, her voice stronger than she expected. "Not now, not ever." And in the shadows between the gravestones, unseen but palpably close, something waited. The house smelled of old wood and dust, a memory of better days. Ilara stepped inside, her shoes squeaking against the creaking floorboards. Her grandmother's presence seemed to linger in every corner, in the faded photographs and the stacks of yellowed letters. She had always felt safe here, even when the world outside had been cruel. But today, grief sat heavy in her chest, and the walls seemed to whisper secrets she wasn't ready to hear. Valeria's warning echoed in her mind, "Leave now or you'll regret it." But Ilara wasn't afraid, not yet. Something told her that the stepmother's words weren't meant to protect her. They were meant to scare her, to keep her away from something. And now, curiosity gnawed at her like a persistent shadow. Ilara wandered through the rooms until she reached her grandmother's study, the door slightly ajar. Inside, the room smelled faintly of lavender and paper, the scent oddly comforting. Her eyes fell on the old writing desk, cluttered with stacks of unopened letters and journals. One envelope, sealed with a delicate wax stamp, caught her attention. She lifted it carefully, feeling the weight of her grandmother's hand in the paper. Her hands shook as she broke the seal. Inside was a letter, written in her grandmother's familiar, flowing handwriting. "My dearest Ilara, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. You must know that not everyone around you can be trusted. Valeria is not who she pretends to be. She envies what you have, what we have built together. She has been plotting quietly to take control of the family estate. You must be careful, my child. Trust no one blindly. The truth will reveal itself when the time is right." Ilara's stomach tightened. Her stepmother's warnings were no warnings at all, they were threats. The memory of Valeria's cold smile at the funeral returned, and fury rose like fire in Ilara's chest. She had always sensed her stepmother's jealousy, the subtle exclusions, the whispered insults behind closed doors. But now it was clear, Valeria had been scheming all along. Tears blurred her vision, but they were not just of grief. They were of anger, too. Her grandmother had protected her for years, leaving clues, leaving guidance even in death. Alara knew she couldn't just mourn quietly. She had to act. She began searching the study, rifling through drawers, discovering ledgers, hidden documents, and coded notes. Every piece she found revealed Valeria's manipulation, forged signatures, secret accounts, and attempts to alienate Alara from her father. The betrayal ran deeper than she had imagined. A cold determination settled over her. Valeria had underestimated her, assuming grief would make her weak, that fear would drive her away. But Alara would not be intimidated. She would face the darkness Valeria had tried to hide, and she would show her stepmother that Alara was no longer the helpless girl she thought she was. As the rain pattered against the windows, Alara whispered to the empty room, "You tried to scare me, but you've just lit the fire." And in the shadows of the study, it felt as though her grandmother was nodding, silently approving the first step of Alara's reckoning. Night had fallen, and the cemetery lay under a thick blanket of mist. The rain had stopped, leaving the world damp and silent, except for the occasional rustle of leaves in the cold wind. Alara returned, drawn by a restless energy she couldn't explain. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. The darkness protects those who are pure of heart. She didn't understand fully, but she knew the night held secrets, and perhaps allies she had yet to meet. She stepped cautiously between the tombstones, her coat brushing the wet grass, heart hammering with both fear and anticipation. Every shadow seemed alive, stretching and twisting, as if the cemetery itself were watching her. And then she saw it, movement just beyond the old family plot. A figure, or something, lurking in the fog, motionless yet impossibly present. Her breath caught. For a moment, doubt gripped her. Was she imagining it? Then the figure shifted, revealing a familiar outline, like her grandmother herself, but darker, stronger, almost ethereal. It didn't speak, it didn't need to. Its presence filled the air around her with quiet power, as though it were ready to shield her from whatever threats lurked in the shadows. Before she could process it fully, Valeria's voice pierced the night. "Alara," she called, smirking from the path above the graves. "You're brave to wander alone, but foolish. You don't belong here. Go home while you can." Alara's fingers tightened around the edge of her coat. She had felt powerless before, but not now. Not with the weight of the darkness beside her. Something protective and unwavering. "I'm not leaving," she said, her voice steady. "Not tonight, not ever." Valeria laughed sharp and cruel. She stepped closer, her heels crunching against wet stone, eyes glinting with satisfaction. "You think you're safe. You think you're strong." She paused, noticing a subtle shift in the air, a chill brushing across her skin. Her confidence faltered slightly, though she didn't yet understand why. The dark presence moved fluid and silent, wrapping around Alara like a shield. The shadows stretched toward Valeria, curling around her legs, brushing her with icy warning. Panic flickered across her stepmother's face for the first time. Alara realized that the shadows weren't there to harm her. They were there to protect her, a manifestation of her grandmother's legacy, a force awakened by Alara's courage and purity of heart. "You underestimated me," Alara whispered, stepping forward, her eyes meeting Valeria's, "and now you'll see who really waits in the dark." Valeria's smirk faltered entirely, replaced by something closer to fear. She backed away instinctively, eyes darting to the shifting shadows, realizing too late that the world had changed. Alara was no longer a girl to be intimidated. She had the darkness on her side, and it was alive with her grandmother's memory, fierce and unyielding. The night grew heavier, the fog wrapping tighter around the tombstones, yet Alara felt a strange calm. She was ready for whatever came next, ready to reclaim what had been stolen, ready to face Valeria and the truths she had hidden. In the distance, thunder rolled softly, almost like a voice echoing through the cemetery, a warning to those who had betrayed her, and a promise that the reckoning was only beginning. Estate was quiet that evening, cloaked in shadows that seemed to stretch longer than usual. Alara moved through the grand hall with a calm she hadn't felt in weeks, each step deliberate, each heartbeat steady. She held the documents her grandmother had left behind, proof of Valeria's schemes, hidden accounts, and forged letters meant to manipulate her father and steal the family inheritance. Tonight, the truth would be revealed. Valeria lounged in the drawing room, her posture arrogantly perfect, a glass of wine in hand. She had thought Alara would flee, intimidated by grief, by the shadows, by fear itself. But Alara had returned, stronger than ever, carrying more than just courage. She carried the legacy of her grandmother and the weight of justice. "Valeria," Alara said, her voice calm but carrying an unmistakable edge, "it's time to see who you really are." Valeria's eyes flickered, but she smiled, masking it as confidence. "You think you have power here. You're still just a child playing in shadows." Alara didn't flinch. She laid the documents on the table, letting each one fall with a quiet authority. "These aren't shadows," she said. "These are the pieces of your lies. Every account you tried to hide, every signature you forged, it's all here." Valeria's smile faltered. She moved to snatch the papers, but Alara stepped back, her hand brushing the edge of the documents like a silent warning. "You thought I wouldn't find out," Alara continued. "You underestimated me. You underestimated her." She glanced toward the darkened corners of the room, where the presence that had protected her at the cemetery lingered in memory, invisible but potent. Panic began to creep into Valeria's eyes. This isn't legal. You can't. Alara's voice rang sharper, stronger. "You've spent years taking what wasn't yours, scheming behind my back, trying to destroy the family I loved. But it ends tonight." With the documents laid bare, Alara explained every secret, every scheme to her father and the estate trustees, who had been called quietly to witness the confrontation. One by one, Valeria's carefully constructed lies crumbled. She tried to defend herself, tried to charm, tried to intimidate, but the truth was unstoppable. The father she had manipulated for years saw her for what she truly was, and the estate's control began shifting back to its rightful heir. Valeria's smirk disappeared completely. She slumped into her chair, defeated, exposed. The darkness that had once intimidated Alara now seemed to retreat, replaced by a calm glow of vindication. Alara stepped outside into the moonlit garden. The air was cool, and the fog curled around the trees, carrying the faint echo of her grandmother's voice in the rustling leaves. She felt a quiet pride, a bittersweet ache. Justice had been served, but her grandmother was still gone. "I did it," she whispered softly. "I kept my promise." And in the shadows of the night, where grief had once threatened to consume her, Alara found strength, protection, and the fierce, unwavering presence of a love that death could not touch. She had faced betrayal, confronted fear, and in the end she had emerged victorious, not just over Valeria, but over every shadow that had tried to hold her down. The dark had waited for her, and now it had guided her home.